to talk about fainting in your mind. Any of you ever fainted in your lifetime? Okay. I am notorious for fainting. I guess. Something, pain or whatever, I pass out and all that. So I know that even when I die, I'm not going to die. I'm going to faint first and then, which isn't, by the way, fainting isn't necessarily a bad feeling. The actual thing is just that you're totally losing control. But I want to talk about fainting in our minds because Jesus talks, or the book of Hebrews talks about fainting in our minds, that we grow weary and we faint in our minds. Now, let me ask you the question, how many of you have ever grown weary? Yes, probably more of us have grown weary. It is one of the things that is natural in our lives, and one of the things that we grow weary with is we grow weary with well-doing, we grow weary with life itself. At the end of in fact, most of us find that at the end of every day, we're weary. And we want some rest, and we want some peace. Now, there are some attributes or symptoms that come along with our weariness. One of those things is that generally when we get weary, when we get tired, we want to give up, we want to quit, we get irritable, we question everything that's happening, and we in essence want a fresh start. Well, what I want to talk about and what I want to focus on is what Jesus, or what is said of Jesus in the book of Hebrews, Hebrews chapter 12, and verse 3. This is what we're looking at today, and I hope that it can be help to all of us. But this is what it tells us here in verse 3 of Hebrews chapter 12, so that we understand and can appreciate it. It tells us, "Consider him who endured such opposition from sinful men, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart." So the admonition here is for us to consider Jesus, so that we don't grow weary and we don't lose heart. Because in all of these things, these are things that are easy for us to do. Now, it is telling us here earlier in the chapter, in the beginning of chapter 12, that we're running a race. And that our race is in the face of sin. And that it may cause us to grow faint. So I want to talk about how that happens as well, where our race that we're called to run may cause us to grow weary and grow faint. We grow faint because there is pressure to give up and to quit. And I've been talking about the adventures of the Smith's journey and all of that, and some of the things that we did, the hikes and all that. And again, on all of those occasions, when you had to put forth a lot of effort toward the end of it, you get weary, and sometimes you lose sight, and because you don't know exactly where the end is. And if you know where the end is, you think, I can continue to go on. And I think there's a lesson in this for us as well, even in terms of the end as we look. Now, there's another thing that happens when we grow weary. There is a pressure for us to join the enemy. That is, to go the other direction. We set out on a goal. We set out on, as it were, a race that is set before us. But when we grow weary, there's a pressure to join with the enemy. And I call it the enemy because it is an enemy to us. It's an enemy to keep us from going on. Also, faintness causes us a loss of faithful realities. Now, that sounds like almost like an oxymoron, a faithful reality. Because faith is things that we don't see, and yet it's a reality. On some of those climbs that we were making, we knew that according to the plan, according to the map, the reality is we should come to this chalet. That would be the reality that we would have. But we didn't see it, even though on one occasion we were very close, but it was obscured from our vision. Also, faithfulness, or I call faintness, results in a focus solely on ourselves. When we grow faith, the only person we can tend to think about is ourselves. It's about how am I feeling? What's happening to me when we grow faint. And then it robs us of our strength. You get woozy when you get faint. The strength that you might have, the ability even to think yourself through a particular job or responsibility or an action, you just don't have the strength for it. And you are convinced at that point in time it is impossible or near impossible. And with that wanting to give up and quit attitude. It also causes disorientation and a loss of sense of direction. When you go, it's like your whole world is spinning around, and vertigo is a kind of a faintness where you're losing your balance and you can't maintain the direction that you're going. So this is what when we consider verse 3 of chapter 12 of the book of Hebrews, when we consider Jesus and the contradiction of sinners is what verse 3 tells us. If we are not to faint, what are the lessons that we can learn from this verse? Well, first of all, it tells us to focus on Jesus. And we talk about growing faith in our mind. Now, why is this important for us? Because none of us, brethren, want to give up and quit. But we have to focus on Jesus and not grow faint. So no matter what the situation is, again, and this is more than just a Nike commercial, just do it. It is a matter of focusing truly on Jesus. Now, the problem of focusing on Jesus is that if we don't have a proper perspective of Jesus, then focusing on Jesus will be distorted. And Jesus gave his disciples that understanding, and at least tried to help them to understand that in chapter 14 of the book of John, when he says, I know that you believe in the Father, you trust in God, believe and trust also in me. But his disciples' lack of understanding of who Jesus was, and our lack of understanding who Jesus is, and how Jesus is our high priest, he is our friend, he is God in the flesh, who he is, if we lose that focus. So take, for example, you're on a trip, and you're growing tired, and you lose confidence in your guide. Well, then what happens is you lose focus in thinking, does he know where he's going? I think he's lost too. And then we don't have the energy. In our life, we have to believe and we have to have a focus on Jesus, who he is, and not lose consciousness of him. Because in our life, sometimes we can tend to lose consciousness of him, that his awareness of God in our life. And I think all of us have seen movies where somebody is about to die and they're trying to keep him alive. And what do? Stay with me. They'll keep saying, stay with me, focus on me, and we'll get you through this. Do not go to sleep. Do not pass out. Do not lose consciousness. And that's what I'm trying to remind us of, is that not to lose consciousness of Jesus in our life. And in order for us to of Jesus, we've got to know some things about Jesus that are accurate. And again, we should recognize that the Father reveals things about Jesus, the Holy Spirit works in our lives to reveal things about Jesus, and how we see and understand who Jesus is has a whole lot of to do with whether or not we think or we faint or we grow weary. Oftentimes that is unfair. In fact, next week's sermon is about living in an unjust world, a faith in an unjust world. So it's about involving Jesus in every aspect of life's race, so that we understand that.
Feeling the blues today, or tired of life already? Do you have questions about life, or need spiritual advice? The Worldwide Church of God is located in Fairfield, Santa Rosa, and Modesto, California. We welcome everyone to attend our worship services with us every week at the times listed on your screen.